Everyone, please welcome to the stage, Mike Fawaz.
We got nice chairs. We upgraded. You guys see that? We upgraded during the break. We got nice chairs. How's it going? Why do I feel like these chairs are far away from each other? Do I dare to make changes? Maybe not. All right. Couple of days. Are you guys having fun? Yeah? What do we got? Awesome. Look, we do something called Pro Talks, where it's all about knowledge. Like when you think about the business, it's all about knowledge. It's all about bringing you value. And we did it, I think we had like 5 Pro Talks last year, but they were all virtual. And this year, as we were thinking like, okay, what do we want to do? First of all, we're very thoughtful when it comes to who we want to invite. But more importantly, how do we want to like hold the event? Do we want to continue doing these Pro Talks virtually, or do we want to do them in person? But knowing Matt, he's very like, he's stubborn and he's on me all the time. Like, hey, we need to figure out a way how to do them, to do these Pro Talks in person. Here we are at All Access. We're going to end All Access with our first Pro Talks for 2023. And as I mentioned, it's important to be thoughtful of who you want to like interview and who do you want to sit down with. So as you're looking through resumes and as you're looking through bios, you're picking people that you can like relate to and people that you feel like you're close to and they believe in the same things that you believe. At least for myself, sometimes sometimes I wasn't born here. My sports is soccer, so it's hard for me to like. Because you think about like, hey, people like your celebrities crush or like your sports people. For me, it's soccer players. But, so it doesn't work as often. I get names of like baseball players and NFL. I'm like, I don't even know any of these people. However, as I was going through a list of human beings that I wanted to interview and people that I wanted to talk to, this gentleman that I'm about to introduce on stage was at the top of my list. And he was at the top of my list for a lot of reasons, but more importantly, for one reason specifically, it's how he sees everyone for their human side, not just a number and not just a score and not just like a business deal. It's more about the human side, and I love that about him. So please welcome Mr. Mitch Albom. Welcome to the stage. I tried. Thank you. We did good? Welcome. How are you?
Good, good. Hi, everybody. Welcome to
Detroit
for those of you.
That's your hometown.
Yeah, I live here, but those of you who don't, welcome. Glad to have you here. Hope you have enjoyed your time here.
Yes, sir. You're on an 8-hour flight.
Yeah, I just came up from Haiti. I operate an orphanage in Haiti, and I'm there every month. And unfortunately, this was the week or 10 days that I was there. I was right in the middle of this, so I flew up last night, and I'm going back tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. So.
Well, we appreciate you coming down.
No problem.
I'll start with this. It was great when we were in communication with you and your team. You didn't hesitate. You're like, oh yeah, whatever you want. In Detroit, we got you. I'll be more than happy to fly in. And I was told like, hey, he's going to fly in for a day. So we got to make sure we don't move the dates around. So thank you for that.
Yeah, well, thank you for not moving the dates around.
We're not going to do that to you. We tried, but
okay.
We kept it. Before, I know we want to start with you, like telling us a story about like how you, like your mission and what you're thinking and why do you do the thing you do. I do want to start with something. I was on a call before coming down here to do this interview with you with our CEO, Mr. Bob Walters. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, hey, this is going to be a quick interview. It's going to be a quick meeting. I got 10 minutes for you. He's like, wow, where are you going? I said, well, I have Pro Talks. He's like, who do you have? I said, Mitch Albom. And I promised you, swear to God, his eyes lit up. He was like, really? I said, yeah. He's like, you're not nervous? I said, oh, I don't know. No, maybe not. He's like, well, maybe because you don't know anything about him. Let me tell you about this guy. And he went on, and you could tell like he is a fan. And I have a question from Bob. So we're going to start by it. He's like, he gave me a bunch of questions. Like, you got to ask him this, you got to ask him that. But we have one question. All right. So we'll start with that. You've been in Detroit for 30 years. You started as a sports writer. You've always been on the human side, in the personal side of people. What did you see in Detroit that made you make it your hometown, knowing that you could have chose anywhere to go?
Well, that's an interesting question, and I get that question a lot. And I get that question a lot from people who don't live in Detroit. Why are you staying in Detroit? Why did you spend your whole career in Detroit? And I get that question a lot from people who live in Detroit. Why are you here? Why didn't you leave?
Maybe only in the winter.
And I'll tell you something that's, no, summer too, but I'll tell you the answer to that question. When I was first hired here at the Detroit Free Press as a sports columnist, 1985, I came to the office. They had written a little story about me coming, but I hadn't written anything yet. I came to the office to kind of find my office and the desk, and there was a letter waiting for me. And I said, how could there be a letter? I haven't even, who did I piss off now? I haven't even written anything yet, and they're already writing to complain about me. So I opened this letter, and it was from an older couple, and they wrote, Dear Mr. Albom, we read about you coming to Detroit, and it sounds like you're talented. We hope you have a good stay here. We know you won't stay very long because none of the good people do. But while you're here, we hope you have a good time. And I looked at this, and I said, these people are already figuring I'm going to be leaving, and I haven't even gotten here yet. What is it about this town that makes people feel like somehow they're unworthy? And as I started to work here and began to fall in love with the ethic here and the family ethic here and the sense of community here, I never gave up on that letter, and I said, you know what? I'm going to prove these people wrong. I'm going to stay longer than 2 years and longer than 3 years. Now, I'm not sure I planned on staying 35 years, but I always felt like, why should everybody leave Detroit? There is so much here that's good and positive and real. And as the years passed, I was offered jobs. I'll be honest with you. I was offered jobs in the New York Times, the LA Times, Chicago Tribune, all the kind of places that you would think would be, like a stepping stone. And I was on ESPN, obviously, many, many years. And I said, why would I want to go to those places? Life is no more real there. Sports is no more real there. In fact, it doesn't matter as much to the people there as it does here because we don't have Broadway and we don't have Hollywood, but sports is really critical. And I liked the sense of community here. I grew up in the East Coast in Philadelphia area. And when in that area, maybe some of you are from that part, when you get a job, you have to get out of high school, maybe you go to college, you get a job, you go where that job takes you. And if that job takes you to Phoenix, they have a party for you, and that's it, you move to Phoenix. Or it's taking you to Florida, they have a party for you, and then that's it, you go to Florida. Here in Michigan, same thing kind of happens, but then they have the party, they go to the job in Florida or whatever, but 6 months later, they're back. And you say, I thought you took a job in Florida. Yeah, but I miss my family. I miss my friends. I wanted to be back with my family and friends. And I watched that, and I said, that's where I want to be. I want to be a community that you miss so much that you say, you know what, work is important, but family and friends are more important, and I'm going to be here. And I think that's why I ended up staying here.
That's awesome. Yeah, look, I moved here on March 3rd, 1998, and I call this home, and it's incredible. It's a great place to be.
Fantastic.
We were talking backstage, and we were talking about your story, and I would love for you to share with our partners, our brokers, our loan officers, and realtors a little bit about the story.
Well, so I do a lot of charity. I operate 9 charities here in Detroit under this big umbrella called Say Detroit. I operate this orphanage I told you about in Haiti. I've got some other things overseas. And a lot of people therefore end up asking me, well, why do you do all this charitable stuff? And I always say to them, look, I didn't always. For the first 37 years of my existence on earth, I wasn't particularly charitable. I was mostly into my own career, my own success, how far could I get, how many TV shows could I be on, how many awards could I win, how much money could I make. I think a lot of us are like that in our 20s and 30s. And then in my late 30s, some of you may be familiar, an old professor of mine named Maury Schwartz, I found out that he's an old college professor of mine. I found out he was dying from Lou Gehrig's disease. And I hadn't stayed in touch with him. He had been a favorite professor of mine for all my college years. I loved him. I took every class he offered. He was like an uncle to me. He said, when I graduated, promise me you'll stay in touch. And I said, I will, I'll stay in touch. And then I graduated, and I never called him because I was so busy working and getting ahead and trying to make money and trying to do everything. And 16 years passed, and I never even made a phone call. And then one night I happened to see him on TV talking to Ted Koppel about what it was like to die from Lou Gehrig's disease. And that's how I found out that he had ALS and was dying. And I went to visit him feeling guilty, what I thought would be one time. But I ended up going back again and again and again every Tuesday for like months and months and months, all the Tuesdays that he had left in his life. And I ended up writing a book called Tuesdays with Maury, which was about what we realize in life when we really know we're going to die. Not when we think one day we're going to die, but when we really are facing it like he was, that puts everything into perspective.
Oh, yeah.
And one lesson that I learned from him was I watched how people would come in and try to cheer him up. Because after all, he's Lou Gehrig's disease, he's in a wheelchair, he can't move, he can't turn his head, he needs to have his head turned, he can't barely speak. It's a terrible, terrible disease. And so everyone who comes in is trying to cheer him up. But people would go into his office, the door would close, they'd come out an hour later in tears, but they would be crying about their job, their love life, their divorce, their thing. And I'd say, what happened? He said, well, I went in to try to cheer him up, but after a couple minutes, he started asking me questions, and I started asking him, and he started really asking me questions, so and the next thing I know, I'm like crying and telling him everything. I tried to cheer him up, but he ended up cheering me up. And I saw this happen so many times, I said, I don't understand, Maury. You're the one who's dying. Why don't you say, let's not talk about your problems. Let's talk about my problems. And he said to me, Mitch, why would I ever take from people like that? Taking just makes me feel like I'm dying. Giving makes me feel like I'm living.
Incredible.
It's a profound little sentence. Also rhymes, so it's easy to remember. Giving makes me feel like I'm living. And I never forgot that moment, and I thought, wow, if in that moment when you have every reason to feel sorry for yourself and count down your days, and what makes you feel good is helping somebody else, then that has to be true for every other day of your life. And that year was the first year I formed my first charity, and I have been involved in charity work ever since. And I will tell you that I have a very nice home here in Michigan. I've done well. I have a nice mattress, a nice temperature, all that. And in Haiti, for many, many years, you just sleep on a 4-inch plastic mattress. It's hot as hell. You can't get anything to work. You know, you're sweating. It's that kind of sleep, like just don't move because the sweat's dripping down. You know, if you move, it's going to get worse. But I sleep better in Haiti than I ever do here because I wake up to the sound of children who otherwise wouldn't have a place to go, and they're squealing and they're laughing and they're eating and they're going to go to school. And I have a sense of I'm doing something with my life that matters. And that's that giving is living. That's that excitement about life when you can get involved with other people that you'll search for in your work, and you'll search overtime and weekends and nights, and you're not going to find it. As important as work is, you can only find this in giving to other people. And I feel blessed that I've been able to find it in my life.
It's amazing. Round of applause. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Like I mentioned, we have broker partners, we have loan officers, we have realtors, and we talk a lot about relationships. Like the market has shifted for us in the last, call it 18 months. And today, more than ever, it's so important to build relationships in your communities, to build relationships with real estate agents in order for you to grow. Talk to us a little bit about like the importance of relationships and like, because you're a relationship guy, you build relationships, whether it's in Haiti or in Detroit. Like maybe you give us a little idea, like what things can our brokers focus on as they're trying to build relationships and get into their communities?
Yeah, well, I think one mistake that we all make when we're younger, I know I did, is that we think that the only people who can help us in the business we're in are people who are in the business that we're in. We need to be talking either to other people who are in the same business or customers. And the world is just divided into that. It's not true. Like I tell people who ask me how to be a good writer, I say, well, I want to be a good sports writer. Who should I read? I said, don't read other sports writers. Read novelists, read playwrights, read poets. Learn how to write outside the box, and you'll be a better sports writer. Well, it's the same thing for what you're talking about. Sometimes you think, well, the only way I'm going to be able to grow my real estate business, for example, my brokerage business, is make more customers who are buying businesses or buying homes, right? But you don't know where that's going to come from. So if you get involved in your community, if you go and volunteer at a local civic center or rec center or adult education center or senior citizen place, whatever. You meet people through there who are ground level people. And you never know when one of those people ends up calling you and saying, hey, you know, I remember you came by. Didn't you say you were in real estate? Or didn't you say you were actually, I got somebody who's looking for that. And you would never think that that person would be a potential lead or take you to something else. But the more connected you are that way, and the more people see you that way, the more people see you as a human being, as instead of just someone who's there when there's money to be made, or there when there's something to be taken from them. I'll give you a perfect example of being brought down to how important it is to be at the same level. During the Super Bowl, which we had here in 2006, I read a story about how they were going to have a party for the homeless, a Super Bowl party for the homeless. I said, what the hell is that? A Super Bowl party for the homeless? Well, it turns out that it was a euphemism for, they didn't want the homeless people on the street when people were going to come in for the Super Bowl, so they were going to gather them all up and put them into a shelter for 2 days, and then on Monday morning, after the Super Bowl was over, they were going to kick them out into the street. And I thought that this was so cruel, because you don't give people help when it's convenient for you. So I wanted to write a column about it, so I went down to a homeless shelter, not far from where we are right here, maybe less than a mile. And I decided to spend the night down there just to write about the experience. I wasn't pretending to be anybody that I wasn't. I just was going to write about it. So I got the blanket, I got the soap, I got the towel, I got my bed, and I was waiting online to get the meal. And as I'm standing online, there's a guy in front of me, and he turns around, he looks me up and down, he says, aren't you Mitch Albom? I said, yeah. And then he looks me up and down again, he says, so what happened to you? Yeah, well, I laughed too. But after I laughed, I realized, you know what? No truer words ever spoken, because I'm sure that that guy never figured to be online at a homeless shelter. And the truth is, me, you, any one of us, I know you with your background that you told me, we're not all that far from that. We think we're way above it. Have 1 or 2 things happen to you. Fired, divorce, scandal, can't get hired, and next thing you know, you're online yourself at a soup kitchen someplace. And what that man did for me, by bringing me down from my perch and reminding me that that's not how he looked at me. I may have looked at myself as like, I'm above this. But he looked at me as like, well, here's another guy down in his luck. What happened to you? And if you can look at yourself that way, and look at other people that way, look at your community that way, and come across to members of your community that way, that you are one of them who just happens to be in the brokerage business, not someone who's in the brokerage business who's only dealing with them because maybe there's something in it for them, it will pay off for you exponentially. The connections that you make through that type of community building, you'll get calls that you didn't even expect, because human beings like to deal with other human beings. Not necessarily salespeople or brokerage people, whatever. First and foremost, they want to think you're a good person. And if you can show them that you don't think that you're above them by getting involved in things in your community, you may end up actually increasing your business.
That's great advice, really, it is. I don't have this question written, but as you were speaking, I started thinking about it. I often have conversations with my sister, even I have a couple of partners in the audience. When you're someone that wasn't born in the United States and you were born in a third world, you learn to appreciate everything that we have in this incredible country. Yeah. You were born in America, but now you're in the second poorest country in the world. Yeah. Can you talk to me about that experience? It's got to be eye-opening when you go out there and you see what you see.
So I'll just give you a couple quick examples. When we at the orphanage say that we're going to take in new children, and we make that announcement, there's a lineup outside our gate that goes down the street. Every person that comes in has a story. One story. A woman walks in with a child who has a limp on his right leg and his right arm. I said, what happened? She said, well, he's not my child. I said, well, then why are you bringing him to us? I was walking in the woods, and I heard a baby crying. And I went over and saw that someone had left a child to die underneath a tree. So I picked the child up, and I brought him to the police station, and the police said to me, "What'd you pick him up for? Now we have to do paperwork. Why don't you just leave him where he was? It's not your business." So she got scared, and she ran off with him, but she was a young girl in her teens, and she didn't know how to be a mom. And when he was 1 year old, she turned away or didn't pay attention to him. He was up on a table, and he jumped off the table thinking he could fly, and he smashed his head open, had to have brain surgery, and he took out a piece of his brain, and he was left kind of a stroke victim. She had no money to feed him, no way to get an education, anything like that. So we took him in. That story happens 3 times a day. We had a little girl that was just, I was telling you backstage, was just brought to us, weighed 6 pounds at 6 months. Her mother said to us, I don't have any money to give her anything. The only thing she's had to eat is sugar water. Sugar water for 6 months. That's it. Water with a little bit of sugar in it. This kind of poverty is not on the continent where you came from, which at least has the benefit of being thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away from us. This is 700 miles off the coast of Florida. You can get there from Fort Lauderdale in an hour and a half. That's how close this is to America. Every time you go to the Bahamas, Cuba, Aruba, Jamaica, any of the places where you go and you suntan or whatever, you are 20 minutes from every story that I'm telling you. And when you see that kind of poverty on the back door of a country that has so much, how can you not help? How can you not help? The situation there right now is an incredible, unbelievable, dangerous situation. 90% of Port-au-Prince, which is the capital city, which is where our orphanage is run by gangs. There is, I know you're going to laugh at this now. You're going to say, well, he's making this up. I'm not making up a single thing. There's one person in the Haitian government. One person in the Haitian government. There are no senators, legislators, but they're all gone. There's one person in the Haitian government. He's the acting prime minister who is the chief suspect in the murder of the previous president. The only reason he's holding on to his job is because he knows if he loses his job, he's going to jail. He's the government. One person. The police forces have walked off. They've just put down their guns. They say, forget it. We can't deal with the gangs. The gangs control the roads. The gangs control the fuel. The gangs control the water. You want to go here. You want to go there. You got to pay somebody off. You pay somebody off. And they kidnap people right off the street, literally by just pulling up. If you're in a car, they'll just pull up in front of your car, get out with a gun, put a gun to your head, take you someplace, take your phone, start dialing people in your phone and saying, what's your name? You know, John. We have John. Give us $1 million. Person on the other end of the line says, they're poor. I mean, these are poor Haitians that they're kidnapping. I don't have $1 million. Give us $500,000. I don't have $500,000. Give us $100,000. I don't want to. They end up trading them for a toaster, a refrigerator, things like that. This is the culture. 700 miles off of our coast, and we don't do anything about it. And this is the environment that our kids grow up in. So to take it full circle, and you said about appreciating what we have, every one of our kids gets a college education if they're up for it. We don't adopt any kids out. We raise them all there. Once they're with us, they're in our family. And our first kid to go to college got into Madonna University about 25 minutes from here. And I took him down to his first day of college. Now, you know, you all probably went to college. When you moved into college, you probably had a big trunk, right? You had your stereo system, you had your speakers, you had all the stuff that you were bringing with you. His entire possessions fit on this table right here, okay? It was in a little bag. And when we got down there, they were waiting for him, and they were so excited to have a Haitian student that they had like a big moving thing, like a dolly for all his luggage. And all he had was a bag. So he said, what do I do, Mr. Mitch? I said, well, put the bag on the dolly. So he put the bag on the dolly, and they pushed the dolly up, and we go up into the dormitory. And we walked down the hall of the dormitory, and we walked into the room. Now, you know a dorm room at Madonna University is nothing special by our standards. A bed, a desk, a heater. That's it, right? He walked in, and he saw this desk, and he put his hands on the desk. He said, do I get a desk?
Yeah.
I said, yeah, that's your desk. And he started to cry. He said, all my life, I always dreamed of having a desk. He used to do his homework on his lap with a pencil that would bust through the paper under a single light bulb, because that was, if we had electricity at all. And he said, all my life I've dreamed of having a desk. Now, how many of us, when we walked into our college dorm rooms, cried when we saw our desk? Probably not too many of us, right? So when you see that, you have an appreciation for how blessed we are in this country, what we have, and how for granted we take it. And if you're like me anyhow, or like a lot of other people, what an obligation we have to try to help people who are in those kinds of communities at least get to some semblance of a fairness level with ours, if you have the means to do it, if you have the time to do it. And I've been blessed to be given both, and that's how I choose to spend my time.
I think I'm being selfish because I love everything you're saying, and when I was going through who do we want to host, and it was evident that it would be you. I mean, God bless you and your family for what you're doing. Another round of applause.
Thank you.
Great. Let's switch it up a little bit.
Okay.
Successful writer, sports analyst, TV personality, everything. Talk to me a little bit about like your role model. I'm sure you've had a role model in your life, and how did they impact your life?
Well, the role models that I've had, first of all, was my father. And my father was a businessman. And I think I came to appreciate him more when I was older, because I didn't know what he did for a living until I was 16 years old and had to fill out a college application. And the college application says father's occupation. And I remember going to my father and saying, what do you do? And he said, just put down businessman. Now, he wasn't, my friends used to say, your dad's in the CIA or something, right? But it wasn't because of that. He did not believe in talking about his work when he came home. He said, when I'm with the family, it's family time. And he and my mother had a policy of never talking about work things, because work things lead to money things, lead to I don't like my boss things. And they didn't feel that was proper around the dinner table when children were there. And so I never heard my dad talk about work. And I honestly didn't know what he did until I was 16. And then when I was about 20 years old and I just started college, my first year, my father got laid off. He had been at a company for 18 years. And out of the blue, they just laid him off. He only needed a year and a half more to be vested in his pension, and he would have gotten half his salary for the rest of his life. But because he was a year and a half shy, he basically had to start all over again. And I remember the summer that I was looking for a summer job. And you know how when you go to summer job, you have to do a resume, like your name, your schooling, your interests, your stuff like that. And I was doing that, and I came downstairs one morning, and my father was at the desk with a yellow pad doing his resume, the same exact way as I was looking for a summer job. He was looking for a job for himself. And he never complained. He got up every morning and put on a suit and drove to his office where he had been let go of, where they said, well, you can use your office for a month until you find another job. And instead of telling him to screw off, he said, fine, I'll do it. He went in dignified. He never complained about anything, and he ultimately found another job. And so my role models have always been people who are like him, who do their jobs well, but do it quietly and don't make a fuss over it. Now I'll take it to the other extreme. I went out to Starbucks in Seattle one time to sign books. And they had a program where they would bring authors into their main headquarters in Starbucks. So I go and I talk like I'm doing here, and I do a thing, and then after we're done, I do a book signing. And I sign books for everybody. And finally, I'm down to the last couple people in line, and the last guy in line is this bearded guy in a white shirt. And he steps up and he puts his book in front of me. And I said, how would you like me to sign this? He said, I said, what's your name? He said, Howard. I said, okay, you want me to sign to Howard? He said, yeah, thanks. So I wrote to Howard, and I said, how long have you been with Starbucks, Howard? And he said, since the beginning. And everybody around started laughing, and I was looking around, and I said, what are you laughing? And someone said, this is Howard Schultz. He started Starbucks. If they didn't say it, he wasn't going to say it. Now, he started the whole thing. And here he was, waited till the end of the line, got his book signed. And I immediately struck up a friendship with him because of that. We're friends to this day. And he reminded me of my dad that way. My dad would have done the same thing. He just would have said his name, and that would have been it. So I think humility, especially in people who have reason not to be humble, are the kind of role models that I like. And the athletes that I have admired have all been those guys. You know, in town here, those of you who might know Detroit, or guys like Joe Dumars, Steve Yzerman, you know, guys who just were humble about what they did. Alan Trammell, you know, never talked a lot about their accomplishments, even though they were hugely accomplished. I think that, especially in today's world, where everybody is about posting about themselves and thumping and chest thumping and me, you know, look at me. I think if you can retain a sense of humility and do great things, you're the most admirable of people.
Fall in love with what you do, not your title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's right.
I love it. Let's talk a little bit about success. Again, like, I'm serious, like when I was having a conversation with Bob Walters, he was like really talking about like all the things that you've done. And look, every one of us defines success in our own way. We have our own personality. We have our own views on success. And I know that like maybe I go back a little bit prior to you doing what you do today, like during your days of like being a sports writer and all this. What can you like talk a little bit about like what does success look like for you?
Well, first of all, there's the getting to success. And I will tell you that, you know, like when I started out, I wasn't silver spooned into anything. I was a musician when I first began, and I failed miserably. I mean, all I ever wanted to do was be a musician, and every time I tried, everything I tried just didn't work out. And that was my dream. So when my dream kind of failed, I had to find something totally different. And I kind of went sideways into writing because I thought, well, that's creative. It's like music, it's creative. I know I couldn't sit behind a desk. That wasn't going to be my thing. So I didn't have any background in it. I hadn't written anything. I hadn't trained for it. You know, I was already out of college. So I had to begin from scratch. And so the smartest thing I ever did was go to a local newspaper and volunteer. It was like a little thing that they gave out in the supermarkets. And I picked it up in the supermarket, and it said, if you have free time, we could use some help. So I went down to this place. I was like the youngest person by like 57 years, you know. And I said, well, I have some free time. I'd like to learn how to like do this newspaper thing. And they gave me an assignment the very first day I walked in. They said, well, go cover this meeting. I'd never written anything. I'd never done anything. And go cover a meeting about parking meters or something. So all my knowledge of journalism was from the movie All the President's Men. That's the only thing I had seen. And so I said, well, that's how you do it. So I got a pad and a pen, and I went in and I asked a bunch of tough questions about parking meters, you know. And I tried to write a story the way I had read stories in the newspaper. And I turned it in to them. And the next week when I went to the supermarket, I picked up the paper, and there was my story on the bottom of the front page with my name on it. And I got this like little like tingle in my stomach, like, wow, I created that, and there it is. I didn't get paid a thing. It wasn't a paycheck that gave me the sense of accomplishment. It was, I did this from scratch. I came up with the idea. I talked my way into it, kind of, and now here it is, and there's evidence of my work. I exist, okay? Something I did, I exist. And to me, success has to begin with that. It has to begin with the sense of, like, I'm bringing something to the table. Not I'm just a cog in the machine, or I'm getting a check that has 6 figures in it or whatever. That's all good. That's all fine, and we all have to feed our families and eat and all that. But the thing that defines success for me is that feel, that tingle in your stomach, like, I did it. I did it. And that for me was a tiny little story. That for you may be some major sale. That for the president of the company may be an acquisition of a thing. It doesn't change. It doesn't change. All the things that I've done in my life, when I got on ESPN, when I got on a New York Times bestseller list, anything like that, it was still that feeling like, hey, it started here, then it went here, and I did it. And if you can have that feeling like, I did it, I set out and I did it, that's the sense of accomplishment you want to have with success. Now, I would take that to another level and talk about, okay, once you have achieved a lot of that, to me, then, true success is learning how to share it with other people. True success doesn't look like this. It looks like this. Okay, if you think of like chips on a table at a gambling, you pull them all in, that's not true success, that's hoarding. You do it like this and you share it, that's ultimately success. Now, you can laugh at that, or you can say that's cynical, or you can say, oh, that's new age, or whatever. You will reach an age where you'll realize, I think I'm older than most of the people in this room. You'll get to an age, and believe me, I heard that sentence when I was your age too. You'll get to an age, I was like, oh yeah, I'll go. I know. And then you find yourself saying it over, and you become your parents. We absolutely become our parents, whatever. But there is a stage in life. You might be hitting it right about now, based on how old you told me you were. You might be hitting it right about now. Not old. It's not old. It's a stage in life in which you have done enough for yourself that you start to realize this isn't as satisfying as sharing it.
Yes.
This isn't as satisfying as giving it to other people or teaching somebody else. And so there's a great expression that I've heard, I can't remember who said it. You spend your young life giving your time away and your old age buying it back. And you want to have that time to spend with your family, to teach, to share with other people. And that may seem anathema to what you were doing right now because you're young and you're working your way up. But there will be a time where it'll be more satisfying to share than it will be to take. And when you reach that point and you embrace it, that's success to me.
I'm not at your level. Awesome.
Well, you're 20 years younger than me.
No, I'm not at your level with giving back. I'm not, but and it's not about me. But I can second voice you here. It feels so good to give back. It is. It's a different feeling. It doesn't matter how much, even time. We can all give back in time. The more you invest in the community and the more you invest in others, I promise you'll sleep better at night, for sure.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to look the same as what sometimes people think. It's like, so I've got to go scoop out soup at a homeless shelter, which is dirty, and all that. No, I mean, there are a million different ways that you can give back. I'll give you an example right here. Okay, we're on Jefferson. I don't know how well you guys, did you guys go over to Campus Martius earlier today?
Yeah, we did a tour.
Okay, right in that building, thanks, by the way, to the generosity of Dan Gilbert and the company, right in that building, you may have even seen it. It's a sign of a little shop called the Detroit Water Ice Factory. You may have passed it, okay? So I own that shop. I started that shop 7 years ago, because I've done so many different charities that I was saying to my partner, like, it's getting to the point where people see me coming, they start running away, because they think, what's he going to ask us now?
Paycheck.
Yeah, and so he's going to ask us to help, I said, there's got to be a way that we can make some money for our charities, because I operate 9 charities here in Detroit called Say Detroit, that it doesn't scare people, that it maybe even they don't even realize they're giving to charity. So I said, what could we sell here in Detroit that has never been sold here before? And I grew up in the South Philly area, South Philadelphia, and they have something in South Philadelphia called water ice. Is anybody here from Philadelphia? Or no? Okay, you know what water ice is. If most of you think water ice is that's a redundant phrase. Water is ice, ice is water. Water ice is like Italian ices, but with flavor all the way through it. So it's not like a snow cone that you can suck the flavor out and then you're just left with a bunch of ice chips. It's just this really good stuff that we used to eat as kids all the time. And for all I know, it's only made in Philadelphia and Baltimore. I said, we could bring that here. and sell it because we loved it as kids. So my friend and I went back to New Jersey or South Philly, where we grew up, and we went to the place that I thought had the best water ice, and I wanted them to like show us what. So I walked in. It was a mom and pop shop, literally a mom and pop owned it. I never met this person before. Walked up to him and said, "Hi, I'm Mitch Albom. I live in Detroit." "Oh, hi. Yeah, I think I've read some of your books." "Okay." I said, "Listen, have you ever thought of doing something for charity?" And she said, "It's so funny that you say that because I was in church just past Sunday and I was asking Jesus to sort of give me a sign to do something significant in my life." And I said, "Well, Jesus sent me." And we talked them into coming here to Detroit, and they taught us everything about the water ice business. And we found this shop, which Dan Gilbert and the people from Quicken Loans let us have for rent-free. We just pay, the portion of the building stuff and all that, but they let it have rent-free. And we opened 7 years ago this shop, the first shop in Detroit, or in Michigan really, that made water ice. And nobody had ever heard of it before. And it does gangbusters. In the summertime, there's a line out the door.
I've been there. It's great.
Nobody knows that every dime we make, we give to charity. It doesn't look like a charity place. It doesn't smell like a charity place. It's not dingy like it's upbeat. It's got, oldies music playing. It's colorful. It's got phenomenal flavors. It just so happens that we just give away all the money. So charity can look like a lot of things. And you're all obviously very bright and energetic people. You wouldn't be in the positions you're in. I bet every one of you has an idea that's just as good as that one, of a way that you could actually raise money for charity and it would feel cool and fun. And we ended up doing it again with a popcorn store that we have up in the Somerset Mall, same thing. And we make our own popcorn, like 30 different gourmet popcorns, Oreo popcorn and double chocolate drizzle popcorn. Every dime goes to charity. It's in the fanciest mall in all of the Midwest. Somerset is like the mall, right? The shishi place, right next to Saks Fifth Avenue and all the rest of it. And we have a little store there, and every dime we make, we give to charity. And if you walk past it, you think, oh, this is one of those high-end places. They must be making a fortune there. We just give it away. So charity can take a lot of different forms. It can be cool. It can be fun. It can be creative. It can be modern. And it can still do a lot of good. And I encourage you, if before you get out of town, you want to go by our shop there, which is very close to here, you'll see what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And look,
pretty good.
It's actually really good. Well, it's pretty good because I'm trying to lose weight.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I gotta lose weight. I'm down 60 pounds.
Okay.
I'm working out.
All right.
But look, I'll tell you what. This was not set up, so I'm glad you brought it up. But we talked yesterday. We talked a lot about the history of our company, and we talked about the vision of Dan Gilbert, and it's all about the community, and it's all about giving back. I promise you, this was not set up at all. I didn't even know that you don't pay rent for it. But this is like, when you think about it and you went on tours and you saw all this, we are in business to make money, obviously, but it's more than that to us. It's about the community. It's truly about Detroit, and it's truly about giving back. So if we have someone like Mitch that wants to give back, we're all about it, and we're always doing things. And for me, I'm proud every single day to wake up and get to work for Dan Gilbert and at Rocket as well. I love it. So I'm glad you shared that.
Yeah.
I do want to talk a little bit about maybe just like a little bit about some advice about, like, we have a lot of brokers in the audience. Some of them are newer. They're just starting. They're just getting into business. They've worked at broker shops. They've worked at lenders. And now they want to do things on their own, which is incredible. What advice would you give, like, someone that's starting their business recently, like from scratch? They're just getting started. They're just getting going. What advice would you give them?
Well, I would temper my advice with the fact that I'm not in the mortgage business, and I wouldn't want to say anything that was, didn't hold for that business. But there are certain things that are true for starting all businesses, for starting all charities, for starting any endeavors. First of all, if you think the most important thing to do when you're going to start something is the name, you're already on the wrong track. I can't tell you how many people come up to me and go, I love your books. I want to write a book. I want to write a book. I've got a name for the book. I've got a name for the book. It's like, Mike's Miracles. I say, okay, well, what's the book about? Well, I don't know. It's going to be, I don't know. I'm going to talk about different things and stuff like that. But I just thought that was such a cool name, Mike's Miracles. So I want to write a book. And I always say this book will never get written because they spent way too much time thinking about how cool the name would be and not any time about how hard the work would be. So first and foremost, recognize that it's not the packaging of anything that you're going to undertake. It's the work that you're going to put into it and the idea. That's one thing. Number two, I started out in the writing business by volunteering to be around other writers. I was not concerned about how much money I made at all. I didn't know about the newspaper business. The only way I figured I could learn about the newspaper business was that newspaper that I wrote that story for. I went to them and said, listen, I'll come and work here for free. Just show me what goes on. And they said, all right, well, they don't take anybody if you don't have to pay them. And I hung around that place day in and day out and day in and day out. I learned how to lay out the stories, how to put in the ads, how the ink worked, stuff that I wasn't ever going to do, but I learned how the whole business worked. And I worked there for 6 months for free. For free. Now, some people will say, what are you working there for free for? You're not getting paid. Why are you working? I was getting paid. I just wasn't getting paid money. I was getting paid experience. And if you can find a place, a shop, another brokerage, whatever, that will let you shadow them or work with them or however it is and learn what it is, that's worth its weight in gold. Yeah. By being alongside other people. Don't concern yourself, well, it doesn't bring me money, then I'm not going to do it. If there is something to be learned, it is worth money. It may not come in the form of cash, but it is valuable because that's how you get your education. In any business, any person who starts, like we did with the water ice business, where we had them come and show us what it was, show us how it works, teach us the whole thing. Right, you can't substitute that. And I'm sure there's a version of that in the mortgage brokerage world. So don't be afraid to learn for free, because there's no such thing as learning for free. You are gaining currency as you learn, as you're starting out. And the last thing I would say is expect to fail at something, at part of it. Expect part of it to flop. If you think like, no, if this part doesn't work, or this sale doesn't work, or this thing falls through, or my partnership doesn't work, then it shows I'm not meant to be. Then you're not paying attention to everybody else who has failed. Because there's not a person in this business world today, in the communities, and that includes the Bill Gateses of the world and all the rest of them, who didn't mess up, fail, or fall backwards a bunch of times early on in their process before they actually finally got ahead. Howard Schultz told me the story about how he started Starbucks. He was working for a coffee company, and they sent him over to Italy for buying, coffee. So he went over to Italy, met with the people who make the buying. But while he's there, he's watching all these people sitting around sipping coffee. So he comes back and he tells his bosses at his company, everybody in Italy, they sit, they drink, they talk, whatever. What if we would open a place where people could just sit and drink coffee? And you know what they said to him? You're an idiot. What a stupid idea. Just go back and buy the coffee. And so he went again, he came back, he saw it again, he came back. And he said, I really think it's... And they said to him, look, coffee in America, you go up, you buy it, you get it, and you get gone. That's what Dunkin' Donuts is for, all right? You don't see people sitting around in Dunkin' Donuts. They go in, they get their coffee, and they go. That's what coffee is in America. That's what they told Howard Schultz. So he finally went in with this idea of having a little place where you could actually sit and drink coffee and have like a little sense of community. And he had to borrow, I think it was $50,000. He went to a bank to try to get a loan. And he was praying, please, please, please give us this loan or whatever. And I guess they just barely got enough money. And within 2 years, not only did he have Starbucks all around, but he bought his old company. He bought them out, and that became his supplier for his coffee company. Now, you all are of a generation where you probably can't imagine a world without a Starbucks in it, right? Without a Starbucks on every corner. Well, just imagine that there was a world 30 years ago where everybody in the business thought that was a stupid idea. Because if they didn't, they would have done it already. And even when the idea was presented to them, they said, no, that's a stupid idea. and now there's Starbucks. So don't tell me that if you fail or somebody tells you you're doing the wrong thing, that somehow, well, that's the end of it for you. You know, because it wasn't the end for what turned out to be a multi-billion-dollar business. You know, he just believed enough in himself to keep going after they told him he was wrong.
It's great. So much valuable advice. And I'll tell you what, I feel like maybe Matt put you up to this. Like, you talked about coming up with the name. I'm trying to write a book, and the first thing I did is exactly what you said, don't do.
Yeah.
I have the name. It's in my office. I even have the logo, the front cover. I'm so happy about it.
Yeah. And that's what it's going to remain, a cover.
I feel like we should have talked before I invested so much time into just the name. And then you talk about how many Starbucks. I mean, my assistant started laughing when he talked about we're at an age where we all drink Starbucks. I mean, there's probably Starbucks in here.
Yeah, I'll bet. All of it.
Well, listen, I'm telling you, I can spend another hour, 2 hours just listening to you. I appreciate everything that you do. I appreciate you as a human more than you can ever imagine. Thank you for coming. I'm sure our broker partners took a lot from this. Maybe some final words from you?
Well, if you give me a chance at final words and to say something to, you know, people who I can, at least the ones I can see, all look pretty young. It may not fit into your paradigm of money and success and getting ahead, but I think it's important. There was a broadcaster here, maybe some of you know him, he was certainly famous here in Detroit, named Ernie Harwell.
Yeah.
Ernie Harwell was for many, many years the voice of the Detroit Tigers. And he was a gentle, easygoing guy. He was world famous for his voice, but he was as humble as a guy could be. I remember the first day I came to Detroit, I was down at Tiger Stadium on the field, and I was new, you know, nobody knew me. I was, you know, just newly hired for the newspaper, and I get a tap on my shoulder. I turn around, and Ernie Harwell sticks his hand out, and he says, "Hi, I'm Ernie Harwell." And I said, no, I'm supposed to say, "Hi, I'm Mitch Albom. You're Ernie Harwell." And he said, "No, I'm Ernie Harwell. I hear you're the new guy. Welcome to town." Whatever. And he was so humble that many years later, just after he died, I wrote a play about him. And in my research for the play, I talked to many people about who he was and what made him so special. And his partner in the booth was a guy named Paul, and he smoked, chain smoked. And Ernie didn't. And for 20-something years, they shared this tiny booth, and he kept smoking, and Ernie never asked him to stop smoking. And one time, somebody asked Ernie, "Why didn't you tell Paul to stop smoking? You had the right." And he said, "Well, I found in life that given a choice between being right or being kind, it's better to be kind." And if you're giving me a chance to say something as a closing statement to young people, we're living in a time where people think being right, their version of right, enables them to be anything but kind, enables them to be mean-spirited, dogmatic, insulting, canceling, all because they have a sense of righteousness. Well, righteousness is a relative term. What we think is so right, I can go to Haiti tomorrow, as I will, and we'll see a whole different set of rules. But kindness is universal. A kind person here in America is a kind person in Haiti, is a kind person in Liberia, is a kind person anywhere. And so as you go into the years that you're facing, you're going to have a lot of opportunities to say, "I'm right, so therefore I get to do this, that, or the other thing." Ask yourselves once in a while, I may be right, but am I being kind? And if the answer is no, maybe, like Ernie said, choose to be kind over right once in a while. I think you'll be better off. That would be what I would share with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate you. Thanks, everyone.
Pleasure.
Oh, you're
Ah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay.